ਪੀਅਰ ਪੋਲੀਅਵ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਮਿਲਟਨ 'ਚ ਅਨਾਉਂਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਹੋਮ ਬਾਇਰਸ ਹੋਊਗੇ ਉਹ 100,000 ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟੈਕਸ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸੇਵ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ। ਕਿੱਦਾਂ? ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਿਊਨਿਸਪੈਲਿਟੀਜ਼ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਨਸੈਂਟਿਵਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਕੇ ਔਰ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੇਲ ਟੈਕਸ ਔਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਟੈਕਸਿਸ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਡਿਊਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਔਰ ਬਿਲਡਰਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਐਕਸਟਰਾ ਟੈਕਸਿਸ ਹੈ, ਲਾਇਸੈਂਸਿੰਗ ਫੀ, ਲਾਇਰ ਫੀ, ਉਹ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਾ ਕੇ ਟੋਟਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ 100,000 ਤੱਕ ਨਵੇਂ ਹਾਊਸ ਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਸੇਵ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈ ਅਗਰ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੈ। ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਟੇਟਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ।
We need a new conservative government to put home buyers first for a change. And that means we need to bring homes that Canadians can afford. Today, I am announcing my plan to cut home building taxes by $100,000 per home so that Canadians can save money when they buy. I'll do this by, one, incentivizing municipalities to cut building taxes, and two, by eliminating the federal sales tax on new homes. Each of those measures will save up to $50,000 on the cost of a single home. That's a total of $100,000. In fact, the GST elimination will be even more powerful in big centers like the GTA and the Greater Vancouver area, because there housing is more expensive and therefore the value of that tax cut will be as much as $65,000 alone, on top of the new tax cuts that I'm announcing today through these municipal incentives. My government will also require municipalities to publicly report their development charges and explain how the federal reimbursement will be used so Canadian municipalities are accountable when they reduce these fees. In Ontario, 30% of the cost of a new home is just direct government taxes. Sales tax, land transfer tax, development taxes. On top of that, there are thousands of dollars of soft costs like delays, zoning, consultants, lobbyists, lawyers, and countless other fees. More money from a new home today built in Canada goes to bureaucrats in office buildings than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers that actually build the homes. Here in Toronto, development charges or building taxes have gone from $30,000 to $140,000. Across Canada, development charges are up $27,000 in the last 2 years. These government costs are passed on to home buyers, turning the dream of home ownership into a nightmare. Instead of challenging these city gatekeepers who jack up development charges, the Liberals have rewarded them. Take the City of Toronto. The Liberals gave the City of Toronto $471 million as a reward for having increased their development charges by 42%. What is the consequence of this for everyday Canadians? Construction is down 39% this year in Toronto. In Victoria and Ottawa, it's the same story. More federal money to reward municipal politicians who've jacked up home building costs. They both raised their fees by 21 and 55% both raised their fees, and resulting reductions in home building have been 21% in Ottawa and 55% in Victoria. Now, Mark Carney has publicly committed to continuing with these same policies. His present-day Liberal housing minister says that the federal government will keep giving money to municipalities who raise home building taxes. Mr. Carney has also brought in the same housing minister that gave us the worst housing costs in the history of Canada, Sean Fraser. The same Liberal MPs, same Liberal ministers, same Liberal policies, same Liberal promises that doubled housing costs. We can't double down on doubling costs. It's even the words. Mark Carney is famous for plagiarizing. Of course, he plagiarized his way through university. He's now plagiarizing Justin Trudeau. Trudeau said in 2017, we are getting the federal government back into the business of housing. Well, this week, Mark Carney said, we're getting government back in the business of building affordable homes. So it's almost a precise plagiarization of his protege. But the point is, nothing is changing. It's the same Liberal promise. The only difference is now Mr. Carney's promising a $35 billion modular home program. Well, it turns out that Brookfield is invested in modular homes. So he's got another conflict of interest that will be good for him, good for bureaucrats, but won't build any houses for Canadians. So Carney has no plan to get a single house built. He has a plan to build more liberal bureaucracy and to profit his own company. We don't need to build bureaucracy. In Ottawa, we need to build houses in our communities. We've lived through these last 10 years of repeated promises. We should never have believed them, and we should definitely not believe them now.
Mr. Poilievre, crime is a serious issue, and you recently held a Stop the Crime rally.
Yes.
And for the last 5 years, we covered so much of crime incidents every day, multiple incidents, car thefts to home invasions. And in last 10 days, there was more than six deaths inside the house shooting, and those people we lost.
Six deaths? Where?
In GTA. And the businessmen are targeted. Earlier it was extortions, now it's a shootout. And you recently announced the new 3 strikes. You are out of law. If you are serious in the crime, my questions here, because most of the police associations, most of the law enforcement agencies are endorsing you. And if you're serious in stopping the crime, the question is, why can't we punish the criminals on the first conviction? Why can't we have the laws like Dubai or a US? And why can't we have the self-protection laws here in Canada? Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. And you're right. It has been absolute crime and chaos in the GTA after the lost Liberal decade. And we cannot trust the same Liberals who caused the problem to fix it. We need a new Conservative government that will lock up the criminals and stop the crime for a change. Now, your question was, why not 1 strike instead of 3 strikes? Well, there will be mandatory jail time again for serious crimes, even on the first offense. So I have said that we will have mandatory life sentences for anyone caught selling more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl, engaged in human trafficking, or gun smuggling. Violent offenses will once again have mandatory prison times and of over 10 years. But what I'm also proposing is that anyone with 3 convictions for serious offenses will get a mandatory prison sentence of 10 years to life, and that they will only ever be released after that 10 years if they prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're no longer a risk. And the only way they can do that is through impeccable behavior, consistent, clean drug tests, and by learning an employable skill in prison that shows they'll be able to get a job and contribute to society. If they don't do those things, a 3-time offender will literally never get out of prison. And so this will be the biggest crackdown on crime in Canadian history. We will be locking up the criminals for good, and your community, Nitin, will be safe once again for a change. It's that the people that are in and out of jail already are going to stay there. See, what's happening, we don't have a lot of criminals in Canada. That's the good news. The bad news is they're very productive. It's the same tiny group that go in and out of the revolving door. We have to reserve them a room anyway because we know they're coming back. In Vancouver Vancouver last year, they arrested the same 40 offenders 6,000 times. So each offender was arrested 150 times in 1 year. Those people basically have a reserved room in the prison. It's just that they keep getting released to reoffend. There's one guy in Penticton, his name is Levi. You can ask the police about him there. He does so much crime that when he's out of prison, the crime rate for the entire city goes up. That guy is in and out of jail constantly. The people that are shooting up our streets, they're in and out of jail constantly. So they're already reserved a room. What I'm saying is, get rid of the revolving door and replace it with an iron gate so that they don't get out. You know, when Prime Minister Harper was in office, we passed major crackdown on crime. And the Liberals said, you're going to have to build these mega prisons to accommodate all the criminals. You know what happened? Not only did crime go down by 25%, incarcerations went down. Because what we did is lock up the rampant offenders who were going to be in and out anyway For them, it's like the Hotel California. They check out, but they never leave. And then the rest of them were scared that there'd be consequences. There is no fear among criminals today. Police officers tell me that criminals don't even bother trying to avoid getting caught. They go in and rob liquor stores without a mask on, and they walk slowly out the door because they know there will be no consequences even if they are caught. As soon as there are consequences, the softer, less habitual criminals, they'll find something else to do because they'll know it's not worth losing 10 years of their life behind bars. And then the rampant offenders, they will be locked up for good where they belong. That is how we're going to stop the crime. Look, the choice is this. After the lost Liberal decade of rampaging crime in our communities, are you going to give them a fourth Liberal term, or is it time for a change to put law-abiding Canadians first with a new Conservative government? By the way, I gather that Mark Carney is now talking about crime. This after Liberals unleashed a massive crime spree in our country with their catch and release criminal justice policy. Catch and release, C-75, allows repeat offenders out of jail within minutes of their latest arrest. House arrest under C-5, another law still in place the Liberals brought in. Who Mr. Carney said yesterday when he was asked about my 3 strikes you're out policy, he said, well, he thinks that he doesn't like the baseball analogy, but he does think that criminals should face the full force of the law. The problem is the Liberal laws have no force. And that's the reason why we have so much crime. Liberal laws allow the offenders to be out 60 or 70 times in a row. Don't be fooled by whatever Mike Carney promises today. The public safety minister who allowed Paul Bernardo out of a maximum security penitentiary is now Mark Carney's Liberal chief of staff. David Lametti, the Liberal justice minister who kept in catch and release bail and house arrest for rampant offenders, is now a paid advisor of Mark Carney. Electing the same Liberals for a 4th time is not going to change what they do on crime. If you want a real change on crime, what you need is a new government, a Conservative government that will lock up criminals with a 3 strikes you're out law, bring jail and not bail, ban the hard drugs, close the drug dens, give 50,000 deserving people the treatment and recovery they deserve. Thanks to the workers who are wearing those stickers that say axe the tax on a day when we're going to announce cutting housing taxes by $100,000 a home, and to present the choice in the next election after the lost Liberal decade of rising costs and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb, whether we're going to whether we can afford a 4th Liberal term, or whether it's time for a change in government to axe taxes, build homes, unleash our resources, and bring home our jobs to stand up to Washington with strength. That's the choice in this election. President Trump, for keeping the tariffs on Canada, all while he offered a 90-day pause on tariffs for dozens of other countries. It remains a mystery why the president treats Canada worse than dozens of other faraway countries who are not America's best friend. And this, of course, happened after Prime Minister Carney boasted that he had had a productive call with President Trump and that he had made, quote, progress. What progress? There are more tariffs, American tariffs on Canada today than there were when Prime Minister Carney took office, while dozens of other countries have secured pauses. Now, I'm not blaming Mr. Carney for the fact that there are even more American tariffs on Canada now than there were when he took office, or for the fact that other countries got a pause in tariffs while he failed to secure one here in Canada. We will all work to end the tariffs on day one after the next election, regardless of who wins. But that's why the fact is that Mark Carney and no one else controls Donald Trump. That's why Carney's biggest election promise and distraction are empty. He's telling you to forget about the lost Liberal decade of rising costs, crime, taxes, and housing prices because he's somehow a magical negotiator. But we're learning that that is not true. He does not control President Trump. No one does. What we do control is what we do here in Canada. And we know what we need to do in this country. And that is to reverse the Liberal policies that Mark Carney advised Trudeau to do and that every present Liberal candidate and MP supported and helped put in place, the policies that have driven away our jobs and weakened our economy. We cannot afford a fourth Liberal term of rising crime and taxes and a falling Canadian economy. We need a change in government to axe taxes, bring home our jobs, and stand up to the Americans from a position of strength. And that is the choice in this coming election. First time in our history, an entire generation of young people can't imagine buying their own house. I won't speak for them, but I would imagine many of these gentlemen here, many of the ladies and gentlemen here, who are literally building homes, can't afford to buy homes. That is the ultimate injustice. And it was never like this before the lost Liberal decade. We've had the worst housing inflation in the G7 under this Liberal government. And the worst of that inflation happened while Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. Carney worsened the housing crisis in the United Kingdom, where he printed great sums of money and inflated the costs over there. He's been widely blamed by the British media for the housing crisis in that country, even though the Canadian media continues to cover up his disastrous overseas record. In Canada, back here in Canada, it now takes more time to save up for a down payment, 29 years in Toronto, than it used to take to pay off the whole mortgage. It's hardly a surprise then that 80% of our young people say they will never be able to afford a home. What we need is a new government with a real change to bring home the Canadian promise that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful and affordable home on a safe street under our proud flag. Canada first for a change. Let's bring it home. Thank you.